started. And I know everybody just ate, no sleeping. We pick on those who sleep. So, we're here to talk about tech coaches. There seems to be the most about tech coaches at this year's VSTE than really I've seen a lot in the past since we first started to begin the program. My name is Karen Streeter. I'm in charge of instructional technology and media services for Portsmouth Schools down in Hampton Roads. And this is Dr. Ruth Okoye, and she is a technology resource teacher in our group. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, we have around 15,000 students, and we've got 30 schools. We're in Hampton Roads, right on the water down near Norfolk and Virginia Beach. Okay? Our program, I'm going to go ahead and we put some resources for you in Edmodo, and as we go through our presentation, we'll reference the things that we put up there so that it'll make a little bit more sense to you when you actually go to the group. Back about 10 years ago, when the state had decided we were going to have instructional coaches, and before they adjusted the definition of them to include data analysts and every other thing that they've tried to cram into it up to this point, we had to decide that we just needed to make a change from what we were doing. We had one person in instructional technology, and when we took the first step, we had 3 people in instructional technology for 1 year before that whole initiative for the state took place. So we really didn't have technology coaches up until the point of the state's funding initiative. So I want you to meet some of the people on my team. There are 11 and a half of us, and we'll talk to you about the half a person as we go through. So if you take a look up here, for those of you who don't like sports, I apologize, but you can't talk about coaching and not talk about great coaches. And a lot of the great coaches come to us in athletics. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, most people probably recognize the gentleman on the right. That's Vince Lombardi. But the person on my team is the one on the left, and his name is Curly Lambeau. And he was the first player coach for the Green Bay Packers. And he was a guy who actually threw the first touchdown, kicked the first field goal, actually mowed the field, and did all of those things in order to play what he was really passionate about. And I have a gal on my team that you will find, you'll walk into a classroom and you'll see her rear end because she's underneath the table putting something together, and then she gets a message on her cell phone because it's Friday afternoon and somebody's going shopping for a computer this weekend in her building, and they want her to meet them at the store in order to be able to buy that computer. That's the kind of person she is. Then in the middle, who knows who that person in the middle on the top is? Anybody? That is Herman Brooks. Anybody know who Herman Brooks is? T.C. Williams High School in Arlington, Virginia. The movie Remember the Titans was made about him. Back in 1971, when they decided to desegregate up in Arlington, he was the African-American coach that they hired to try to bring people together, and they actually won the state championship under him. I have a person on my team who was put in charge of bringing some staffs together in a brand new building, people that, based on the part of town they're from and the histories of their schools, were not real excited about becoming one, right? But it's worked in a school system for any length of time has had that happen. So she was a master at that. So she's my Herman Boone. Over here is Herb Brooks. Herb Brooks was the coach in 1980 for the U.S. hockey team, the Miracle on Ice. And he took a ragtag group of college-age hockey players in the United States, and he defeated the powerhouse of the Russian team, hence the Miracle on Ice. And I have someone who walked into a school, and they had TEIs. Everybody knows what TEIs are, the state's definition of technology enhanced item, which we all know is not. But what she did is she walked in and there was twine running across in a loop across the classroom, and on it were pinned these sheets of paper with TEI questions written on them. That this teacher was teaching her students how to do TEI questions based on these pieces of paper that were strung across her room. So she had a great way to go with this particular staff when she walked into that building, and she has managed to turn that building into probably one of the most forward-moving schools in our school division because of her tenacity. She's amazing. Then in the bottom left-hand corner, you see a gentleman getting a kiss on the head. That is Michael Jordan kissing Dean Smith. Dean Smith was a lifer at UNC Chapel Hill. And when people think about Dean Smith, they think about what's called a coaching tree. And a coaching tree talks about the players that played for you, and where did they go and what did they do when they left you. And the people that worked for you as assistant coaches or other people on your team underneath you, where did they go when they left you, and how successful were they when they got jobs in the industry? Dean Smith was a master at that. If you look back at his coaching tree, you'll see his legacy is so much more beyond just the wins that he got through being the coach at UNC Chapel Hill. You know, and having a Michael Jordan that he grew was not a very bad legacy to have either. That's my Dean Smith over there. We call her the mother of our team because 4 of the other people that are on our team were actually ones that she birthed. She was working in buildings and recognized the value of certain teachers that she saw in her building, and she said, okay, I'm going to nurture these folks in a different way. And so now we have 4 of them on our team. She has 3 girls and a boy. And you want to know what? Those 3 girls and a boy are all here at this conference presenting. So she was able to recognize the qualities in those people, to nurture them, to grow them, to become coaches on their own. So she is my coach's coach. Then, in the middle, you see Big Bill Russell. Okay? He was the dynasty of the Celtics for a very long time. He was known for his one-on-one defense. He was known for, man-to-man, for rebounding, for being just a little bit off balance. And we have a gentleman on our team that's perfect for that. He was also the Celtics' first player coach. And one of the things about this gentleman, actually her son, who's here this week presenting, he really is a teacher's coach. He can go into any building if somebody needs help, and he can manage to put everybody at ease, and he has just a fabulous sense of humor. And so he really can get in there and walk into anybody's classroom. They don't feel threatened. They don't have anything. So he's a real player coach. Then in the bottom right-hand corner, you see Billy Beane. For those of you who watched Brad Pitt in Moneyball, that is the gentleman that Brad Pitt was portraying. And Billy Beane did something different in baseball. He decided to look at sabermetrics and to look at data about on-base percentages and things like that, rather than paying money for huge named players. He was strategic about who he put on his team so that he could get people on base, he could score runs, and under his tutelage, the Oakland Athletics actually won 20 games in a row, something in 100 years of baseball that had never happened. And people in the baseball industry thought he had lost his mind because he was not following the same tradition of the scouting and all of the other things. But you know what? He took over as general manager of a team that gave him a budget that, pardon the expression, wasn't worth a pea hole in a snowbank, right? And that's kind of what we've got down in Portsmouth. We're a little bit of the red-headed stepchild of Hampton Roads. And so we had to build a team without a very big budget. So this gentleman, who happens to be within 3 months of my own age, is who I represent. And then you see here in the circle, it looks like a basketball. Anybody that knows coaches or talks about coaches knows John Wooden of UCLA. John Wooden coached the likes of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton, all names that people know. He was known for his patience, he was strategic, he was just amazing. And everybody that talks about coaching talks about his abilities. He doesn't represent anybody on our team, he represents what I wish everybody on our team could be as a coach. So those are some of the characters that I have on my team. And they all possess different strengths, and they have some weaknesses, which is what we're going to talk about too. So how did we build our team? You know, first we got to talk about what teamwork is. We're talking about working together. Ruth, why don't you tell them why you thought this was a good quote for teamwork?
Well, I mean, the whole idea of building our team, when we talk about, she told you about our players, you know, each one of our players in their own right was, you know, a superstar in their building, you know. And so when you take people who've got those kind of skills and abilities and have to work together and be able to, you know, count on one another. You know, the whole idea of being able to put your individual thing into what's going on together is what we've tried to, you know, encourage our folks to do in terms of what teamwork is and what we try to show them what we need them to do. So,
you start where you are, you use what you have, and you do what you can. All right? So we were told we could fill X number of positions, right, based on the number of students that we had in the school division. The state was going to fund those positions. And one of the biggest struggles was the fact that it was going to be a distributed workforce, right? You've got instructional technology, but yet each of these people that were on that team were going to be out in satellite offices, so to speak. So if you look up things in industry and you want to look about how people manage that, you can look up how to deal with a distributed workforce, because that's what it is when you're managing them centrally and they're in all those different buildings. So you got to do a lot of little things over and over and over. We talk in our meetings about beating the drum. There are certain things that relate to customer service. There are certain things that relate to sending a common message. They're not spectacular, but over the course of time, they're going to send a consistent message, and they're really going to build an identity for your team. Because part of what you have to do when you only have one person that does that thing in a building, or in our case, some of our people serve multiple buildings, you really have to be able to create a strong identity for that individual and a strong identity for that team. So you have to build relationship. You go in a building and really, some teachers can let you come in their room and teach their class if you don't have a relationship with them? I don't think so. Or stay after school with you, or be willing to meet you before school. You know, you can't do things like that without having relationship. And you've got to communicate. One of the weaknesses of an individual on our team, actually, is she thinks that she has to communicate digitally with everything she does. And I keep saying to her, dude, pick up the phone. Or walk over and have a conversation with that person. Because, you know, sometimes an email chain can go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I can have a 30-second conversation with them. And not only have we dealt with what we were just emailing about, but we've also built relationship. Okay? So, successful teamwork depends on all of those things.
So, we're going to talk a little bit about coaching versus managing. Because one of the things that, you know, she's talking about the whole email chain thing, you know, and when you're doing things and you want to talk to folks and put things out digitally, because you want to say, you know, as information comes in and you're a coach and you want to do whatever the person's asking you to do, you want to do it quickly, sometimes it really, truly is easier just to, you know, send out an email, point them to this, point them to that. But in the end, what you're doing is managing requests and not actually putting the time in to develop the person who you're trying to coach. And that's what we really, truly want our folks to do on our team, is to put the time in, you know, identify what their issue is, what their struggle is. Because just because they're emailing you for, you know, they have issues with gradebook or whatever, that doesn't mean that that's the issue that they're really dealing with. They may actually have an issue with managing lots of different kinds of information. And gradebook is just what happens to be on the top of the fire. In which case, if you actually sat and talked to them, you'd find out what their issue was, and then be able to talk to them about ways that they can deal with the information they're having difficulties dealing with. And the whole, here's an instruction on how to do blah, blah, blah in gradebook doesn't even begin to get to their issue. And that's when we are dealing with issues and dealing with the people and actually coaching them with what their issues are, then instead of managing them, that's when we get to really, really, truly be coaches, you know, as opposed to just, you know, building managers.
And these are the things we learned after we built our initial team, right? Because you think you know what you're looking for when you first try to build your team. And then it isn't, it's kind of like when you're starting out in a new relationship, right? It isn't until you're around that person after they've had like 3 or 4 bad days in a row, or some things go wrong or whatever, until you really realize what the person's made of. And so after we went through our first year or two, that was when we realized that we were really wanting to focus on looking for some different characteristics when we hired folks. And we'll talk to you about how we did that. You know, we do things a little bit differently where we are. We're fortunate in that we're small and we're left alone. When we got to set our team up, the biggest thing when I talked to the superintendent was I begged him to please let them report through instructional technology, not to report to the principal, because they would be in the building and they would just be pulled apart in so many different directions that in order to really create an identity for a team, we needed to be able to drive that identity and know that somebody else couldn't take that apart. And if he was here, I'd be kissing him on the head, just like Michael Jordan was kissing Dean Smith on the head, because he allowed us to do that and has let us stay reporting that way. And I think that's probably one of the most critical pieces for us. So then what we had to figure out is there was no model, right? So you can't just go out and say reality doesn't work and I'm going to fix it or whatever, because people will reject it, even if there were models in other states, because we looked at some other states, and we just said, you know what, we're going to build it the way we want, we're going to make it work, and then we'll make the other model obsolete. Because we had some content specialists in our school division and we didn't want to run our department that way. So there were some myths about team building that we needed to overcome, right? Teams are natural, and people's ability to function in them are natural. Holy cow, no. People need to learn how to work on a team. And you know, that's one of the things, boy, if you're working with teachers and they talk about collaborative learning and all this kind of stuff, there isn't anything you can teach a child or an adult that's any more valuable than working on a team. Because you know what? When they go out and they get a job, that's what they're going to work on when they get in the workplace. There aren't very many people that work in isolation. So it's very critical, but it's not natural. Any group can be turned into a team. No, no, no. Because you have some people that just really refuse to play well with others, okay? Changing the traditional hierarchy. People need to, teams should be self-directed as soon as possible. Well, you know what? If you get some people that didn't know how to work on a team, and you put them in there in a team, and they're just learning how to be on a team, you don't want to push them to be self-directed right away, because then you've just asked them to be an expert in something they're just learning how to do. So part of what we needed to do is make sure that we built the identity of the team and we continued to support the group as a team.
Yeah. So what we did was we actually had some models that we wanted our folks to think about when they thought about us as a team. And my favorite one is the musher with the dog sled, right? And it was hilarious. One time we came into our team meeting, we meet once a month, came to the team meeting, and all we heard was the Iditarod back in the background the whole entire time, because Karen wanted us to all understand that we were all going the same way. You know, we were all going to be pulling together, and that no matter what position you had in the dog sled, she was still the musher, and when she cracked that whip, we needed to make sure we were going as hard, fast as we can, you know?
They did try to throw me off the sled any number of different times. And for those of you that don't know much about the Iditarod is the major dog sled race that they do up in Alaska. Days and days and days and miles and miles and miles for some crazy people. And you think about that lead dog being out front, being in charge, and you think that's got to be the best dog, right? A lot of times it's the dogs the other ones don't like. And they put that dog out front and they're all trying to get its backside, right? So they're all just running as hard as they can down that path. So sometimes if you get put out in the front, you need to be very careful because the people are going to be going after you. But so we talked a lot about the Iditarod being a distance race and the fact that we were going to have to continue to pull together over long periods of time. And that we needed to get used to each other. And that when it was really, really cold out, we needed to be able to huddle up and we needed to be able to take care of each other. So this is a handout that's in there. I think when you look at teams, this just kind of cracked me up, you know, when I found it. It talks about the kind of people that can be on a team and what their level of dedication is to the team. And I can tell you when we built our team and we thought we had started out really great, we ended up with some of these folks down here, which I would never have figured we were going to end up with until we started in that relationship and somebody had a few bad days in a row, and then we really saw what some people were made of, what kind of chops they had. So we talk about the refiner's fire, for those of you who are familiar with the refiner's fire, right? Stir and you stir and you stir, and the bad stuff comes up to the top and you skim it off and you throw it out, and then you keep stirring and stirring and stirring, and the next level of bad comes to the top and you skim it off, you throw it out, and you keep going. So in the beginning, you may have been someone that appeared to be here, but after a few years, as you continue with the refiner's fire, and you continue to realign, and you continue to rethink your team, you may start to go this way, right? Because the next thing you know, the things that were challenges for you as a team member that you didn't work on, now shone the light on you that said, we either need to grow or we need to go. Okay. So, we have a lot of fun, but we also have a mission. We have a common mission. Everybody knows what that mission is. And we know that we have to continue our own growth as a group.
Tell them about the Craft Hospital.
The Craft Hospital, we have Craft Hospital a few times a year. It depends. You know, sometimes in what you do, you get these initiatives. Sometimes we start the school year, we think we're really ready to go, and the next thing you know, we're off balance because we just finished having to do new teacher orientation and the school improvement meeting kickoff and new initiatives that the IT department came to us and said we have to be involved in, and we're like, what? No, we're opening school. And so all the planning that we had just goes out the window. And so everybody's just a little stressed. So we have Craft Hospital moment.
What is it?
Craft Hospital,
Craft.
yes. And you come into our meeting and the first thing we do is we do some type of craft. Right? Because you know when you go to those special places and everybody's in there and they're either watching television or making a pot holder, right? Something like that. So we actually will make crafts. Sometimes we make finger puppets for Halloween. What did we just make?
We made wreaths.
We made wreaths,
Thanksgiving
foam wreaths. Sometimes we decorate big nameplates of things to give away as gifts. Whatever it is. It's what we call our Craft Hospital moment. And I have to tell you, it's something that really brings everybody together. And the people on our team that are most excited about the Craft Hospital moment are the men. Making their little ornament or their puppet. I can't wait to take this home, you know. So, you know, every once in a while, some of what you have to do is just step back and just get a little bit crazy. And so we do that. We recognize that we're all a little bit crazy, and we need to make pot holders for an afternoon. Now, we still have a meeting, but we have a very nice pot holder to take home at the end of the meeting. The characteristics of a coach. You know, you can find all kinds of wonderful stuff online, but why don't you guys just take a couple of seconds, turn around, talk in groups of 3 or 4, and think about, for you, what are the characteristics of a coach?
And how do you define that word?
Talk amongst each other.
Last time, just knowing.
Oh, okay.
That's hard to do.
Very good.
What this person needs. I say to add to that, because I don't know, but as well for what they're doing. Critical eye that can see what needs to be fixed. And, how to fix it. But also building a lot of like, they're not here today, but they can see that needs to be done. And they're able to communicate that in a non-threatening way, being able to motivate which can be challenging depending on.
It's like we're going back into our teaching.
I know my kids say what they like is the same thing as my daughter does. Never mind, like the guy who does conditioning, who's able to model and do it with her or in front of her. That's what she likes to say. She said, it's okay to have somebody tell me that. To demonstrate the way I was supposed to.
Just if you were below and all of a sudden 52 to 1 to nothing.
Okay, let's hear a little bit about what you think. Who wants to tell me what you think, the characteristics, or how you define a coach? Anybody? Hands up. Foot up. Yes.
Good listener.
Good listener. That's excellent. Anybody else?
A motivator without being an intimidator.
Oh, that's very good. We're going to steal that and put it on a slide. Okay. Anybody else? Trustworthy?
I stole one from my child who says that the best coach is one who models, who's able to model the behavior or the activity, what you want to see, but they are able to model it either with you or in front of you so then you can follow it.
Excellent. I think that's probably one of the number one pieces of being a good coach. Absolutely. But I think when you model and you do that, then you build trust. I think some of those other things are born out of that modeling. Very good. Anybody else?
A great organizer.
Great organizer. And one of the things we learn is that not all teachers are great organizers. You know, in my mind when we first got started, my background is in industry. And I thought teachers have to go and stay on a pacing guide. They have to create lesson plans, thematic units, all that kind of stuff. Organization is going to be a snap. No. 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 So there are some people, organization is not an inherent trait. And for some, I guess it can be beaten into you, but I don't know that it's natural for everyone. Okay, so go ahead and tell people what you think a coach is, Dr. Ruth.
A coach is a process expert, and they're committed to stretching and challenging the person that they're coaching. And the real important thing about a coach that I think is the most pivotal thing is that they are equally committed to the person's learning and learning experience as the person is, you know. And sometimes, you know, we get into some interesting things because, you know, we're the tech person in the building and people think we're supposed to be doing things for them as opposed to be doing things with them, you know. And so I draw the line in my buildings, you know, that they're doing for. I do a little bit for, but not a whole lot, because the bottom line for me is I'm supposed to be coaching you, in which case I'm not supposed to be doing for you. I'm supposed to be stretching you, giving you what you need so that you can come up to where you can handle the idea that you had, you know. And so that's what I think is the most important thing about this whole idea of what a good coach is that, you know, I'm not more invested in what's going on in your classroom than you are. Because if I am, then I'm really just in there doing for you and training you and giving, but you're not having any kind of accountability for what it is that we're doing as we build together. So that's what, you know, is important here, I think, in that definition of good coaching.
Because, you know, depending upon the building you're in or the administrator you have, you know, you may have people who think you need to be the one doing all the presentations for the PTA, or you need to be the one.
Yeah, there's a speaker in here. But I would love to know how you guys address that. Like, what is a good example? If I could just say what you just said, as my teacher, I think they would understand and get it, you know? But-
I'm here to, yes, because you know what, and I'll tell you something, one of the most important things is that whoever you report to, they support you in that. Because what's gonna happen when you say no, is some people are gonna get a little nutted up. And some people aren't gonna like it, and some people are squeaky, you know, and they need to understand that I'm here to help you. Thank you. No.
Okay.
I'll tell you one of the things that we do is we do something at the beginning of the year. This is something we skipped over at the beginning. We do some common activities in all of our buildings because part of this is to be able to build the identity for the team and to send a consistent message. And one of the things we do is we have something called a building service level agreement, a BSLA. And that is something that we go through with the building administrator that the building has to sign. And it's where we're talking about the different types of things that we're going to do for them. They're guiding this. This is them picking different things that they want to do. There are certain division initiatives we're going to do anyway because they're division level initiatives. But this is to talk about, hey, what are you putting into your school improvement plan? How are we going to be able to service your needs in the building or whatever your instructional focus may be for the year? Maybe you're doing book studies on vocabulary. Maybe you're doing things, your initiative this year is going to be differentiation. How do we fit into that picture? And so we create this building level service agreement that talks to them about what we do, about when we serve your building during the year, how you ask for additional services from us, and that's every year. Now we've been doing this on 10 years, and every year we go back and we do the same thing, and we have the same conversations. Because we also create something that goes into the administrator's handbook every year that identifies the new initiatives we have coming up. Maybe we got some new software, maybe we did some different things. So we go over that. And then we also have the pie chart that we have broken out based on what we say we're supposed to spend our time doing in your building and what those things mean and why. And we also talk about what a coach means. And everybody has the packet that we create, so that's the same packet, the same conversation, the same, and so then if there are any questions, then they should have all used the same materials to have the conversation. They create a separate building service level agreement, but they have the same conversations.
I think to answer your question a little bit more directly, there are times when I've got a teacher who says, I just need this, this, that, and the other thing, and I'll sit down with the teacher and I can say, here's what I'm prepared to do, and we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. All this requires time on your part, time on my part. We can do it together, and not everyone's happy with that, and I get that, and a lot of times, they'll go to their building principal, and say, but I need her to do blah, blah, blah. And I've had that happen. And what's really great is because we've had that conversation, the building principal is ready to come to me and say, okay, where does this fall in our little contract? And what do I need to do so that I can have that conversation with the principal? Because what's really great about the way in which she's supported us and done our, thing, in our structure, is that she's told the principals that we are her representative in the building. So if they've got a question about what's going to happen or what they need or whatever, they're supposed to come to us first. And then if they have a question about what we've discussed, they can go to her. But her first question when she talks to the principal is, have you talked to so-and-so? And she goes right back to that whole agreement thing that we talked about at the beginning of the year, that I'm your representative for the year, And in addition, because, sometimes that always doesn't work out cleanly either, when I know that we've had an issue, because you can tell when it's not going right, Did you get that look in their face? And the next thing is they're marching down the hall, right? I love the fact that, Karen's got an open door policy. I can say to myself, I'm going to have, I'll tell you, I had an issue. I was in a new building. It's a building I've been in now for 5 years, but the first year I was in that building, I had a real issue with the principal. Principal had an issue with me, and I guess, we were in November. They were changing things and things were going on. It was awful. They were building while the kids were still in the building. It was just awful. So it was an awful time. But she wanted me to do something, and I didn't understand the request. And so then the next time I came in the building, she and I had a face-off in the middle of the front office, in front of everybody. In front of the teachers, the parents were there, and the secretaries were there. It was awful. And she just basically told me not to come back to her building, in front of all those people. I was like, I'm sorry you feel that way. I walked out. I picked up the phone as I walked out. I said, Karen, you're going to get a call. Just make sure you know this is what happened. I don't know, right? I didn't go back to the building until I was told to go back. When I was told to go back, she'd had a conversation with the principal. There was a reiteration of the plan, and then I was able to understand what the request was and where it fell in with what I was asked to do. But again, she just goes back and she says, we talked about this. You talked to her about this? This was the whole idea. And then, if there's a problem, we just let her know. I mean, really and truly, that's what I like about the whole autonomy thing of our structures. That, I can do. If I have a problem, all I gotta do is make a phone call. All I have to do is make a phone call. She's ready to go back. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about working in the structures she's created.
If it's, because we don't always like the processes that we have to follow, right? Well, part of what we try to do, because some of the things that have caught us in the past is, you've got a process. And people used to come to me and say, we're constantly having to do stuff that are technical, right? Going on and on and on. And I say, we created a process for using the help desk or for doing whatever, and for pushing the issue back to the place it's supposed to be. Because a lot of times what happens is, you're the front line for the teacher, you're the one they see all the time, so the one they chase into the bathroom, the one that, all of that, and you're wanting to have a relationship with them. So you don't want to have to say, no, I can't help you with that, because you want to be able to be the person that saves them. But sometimes, if that's all you're doing, you can't do the very thing that they need you most for. So we used to go around and around and around, and everybody, we get to a point in our meetings where I look at them and I say, have we reached the eye roll point, right? Where if Karen says this one more time, everybody's like, come on, right? And it's because we need to understand that we have to work the process. Now, if the process doesn't work, then we try to change the process. But unless we've worked the process and found out that it doesn't work, then we can't say we have to change the process. I'm all about changing it. But if we don't actually follow it, because the joke used to be, if it's not in the help desk system, it doesn't exist. That was a mantra. We have mantras at our meetings. Sometimes we stand up and say, we are teachers first. Right? Because that's what you have to remember. We are teachers first. You could have been in the system for 15 years. Now you're an instructional technology resource teacher, and the other teachers look at you like you don't know how to teach. You're like, I don't understand. I was next to you in a room for 10 years, right? You used to ask for my lesson plans, and now you don't think I can teach. I don't get it. So we stand up and we say, I'm a teacher first, and after I make them do that, they're like, okay, whatever, Karen. Can we make puppets? And then we talk about if it isn't in the help desk, it doesn't exist, right? We say that over and over and over, because then there's no paper trail. So how can you have a teacher come to you and say, this is never getting done, but you've got nothing to go back to know that it's not getting done? And so some of it that goes back to what you were saying is it's beating that drum. Like when you watch, was it Ben-Hur or whatever, and they're like, dish, dish, and they're all rowing those old Roman ships, and the guy's down there banging the drum. Sometimes that has to be what it is. Same message, same thing, over and over and over. And some people you're just going to wear down. And then other people are finally going to go, wow, I get it. And you just have to send that same message, but you need to be supported by your administrator in that, in order to be able to do that. You know what? Y'all hit that on the head in terms of what a coach does. You got a mentor, right? Wipe noses, spray the Bactine on the knee, put the Band-Aid on, fuss at them. Because sometimes you have to, in order to do that, you've got to push people out of their comfort zone, because you're asking them to do things differently. It doesn't even matter sometimes if they want to do it. It's still hard because it's different. Forget, but the one thing, boy, is attitude, right? in everything that you do, give me somebody that doesn't even know how to throw a light switch on, right? I can teach you how to do anything, but you gotta want to be there, and you gotta be willing to participate. But that goes back to relationship. If you have relationship, then you're going to be able to get them to do some of those other things. Okay?
We've got a couple of things we call skill trait clusters that we like our coaches to have. And there are 8 of them. I'm going to read them because I don't know them by heart, which is kind of sad. I guess I shouldn't admit that.
That's how she's evaluated.
So we've got the skill trait clusters, and we have a old form. We'd stopped using it, but it's got the skill traits on there and what we have as identifiers to, so you can see how we began the process of looking at these. And it's on the Edmodo, in the Edmodo on the folder. So the first one is interpersonal skills, right? Then we've got organization and planning, and then we have instruction, then we've got technical skills, we've got work ethic, we've got entrepreneurial skills, communication, and then leadership. And those are things that we, from the very, very beginning, thought that, these are the core skills that our coaches are going to need to have. If they haven't got all of them, that's okay. If they're missing 1 or 2, that's okay, because, we can teach something. But after they don't have...
You hit 3, and guess whose face is coming up the top of the pot in the refiner's fire? The person who's got weak areas in 3 or more of the clusters. Because you can't, your buddies can't be covering for you in every one of your weak areas. So, and some of them are really important, and most people ask us, what is this entrepreneurial thing? And the way I look at it, because I come from the business world, is y'all are running your own little business in those buildings. Because those teachers are your customers. If you've got a franchise, and you're running this little business, and nobody wants to come buy your stuff, guess what? No more franchise. But if you do a really good job, if you're like Ruth, then I make you do lots of things. But no, you have to have that entrepreneurial thought because you're running a business. Nobody else is going to walk and do building sweeps up and down the hall. Hey, how you doing? Just get your face out in front of people constantly, sitting with them in the lunchroom, commiserating with them in the bathroom, whatever it is you got to do, developing relationship. And you've got to market your services, same way you would if you were an entrepreneur. You've got to be able to organize yourself. All of those things, it's like running a small business. You've got to keep your schedule. You've got to decide what your client base needs. People are shifting their product line all of the time. You've got to be thinking about what your people need. You've got to know them well enough to know what the next step is for them. That's being an entrepreneur.
You've got to be able to forecast. What are they going to need 6 months from now? What do they need 2 years from now? And begin to be thinking about what it is you've got to do to get ready for that demand that's coming down the pipe.
Because in the beginning, we were just teaching skills, right? Now, I think the whole mantra of this conference is it's not about the how anymore, it's about the why, right? But yet you still have a bunch of people in your building that's about the how for them, right? So you have to be able to work to the lowest common denominator. But you also have to be thinking, where do I need to be able to lead that person that's ready to go a little bit farther? The person that you do consultative work for, the one that you can lob the bone at, tell them, go watch these things on Vimeo or on YouTube, or take a look at this, or I picked this up at a conference, and you come back the next day and you look in their room and they're already doing it, or some kind of morphed version of that. So you have to be able to think, you've got to be taking yourself and your mind and everything else out here while you're still back here with your toe in the water of the person who's your lowest common denominator. And that is hard. When you look at all those skill traits and you think about what you have to possess to really be successful, that's some serious stuff. I mean, really and truly, it's the people who are successful in that job, to me, are just amazing. Because of all of those things they have to possess. So we put the list out there so you can see what we think. For any of you who are familiar with John Maxwell, he is a management leadership guru in the Christian world. And he has a book, we've referenced everything for you, 17 principles for leadership. And one of them he talks about is accountability. And you know what? When you're trying to build a team, you need to be able to count on the other people on your team when you need to be able to count on the other people on your team. You ever been on a team and you're like, oh God, please don't make me work with Bob, right? You know, because not only is he disagreeable, but he can't hold his weight. And I know that I'm gonna be carrying Bob again, right? Can't have that on a team where there's only one of you in every building. So when you look at that and you think about this accountability, you got to have character, you got to be competent. We were talking about those skill sets. You got to have commitment. You got to have that fire burning in your belly. Because if it's not, you're never going to be able to continue to self-develop to stay ahead of that person you're consulting with, and then have the toe back here with the person that's your lowest common denominator. You have to have consistency. Everybody's got to send the same message, because honey, if they smell weakness in another building, that's where they're going to go, right? And cohesion. Everybody's got to row together, right? We talk a lot about having the boat, right? You got all the team members in the boat, and as the refiner's fire is working, you may have the one person who's rowing, trying to row the tongue depressor, right? That's the person who just doesn't have the competence they need to keep up. Then you got the other person who just thinks they only have to row like every other time. Okay? Or you got one side, right? 20% of the people do 80% of the work. So if you're rowing like that, what's happening to your boat? Whoa! Or you may have the one person that's being towed in an inner tube behind the boat that everybody loves, and they like doing what they're doing, but they're just there catching fish for everybody to have dinner. They're not really there to do the work. You know, so you picture that boat, think about the people that are on your team, and you need to have, everybody needs to be cohesive, everybody needs to be consistent. They all need to be rowing in the same direction, with the same skill, with the same pull, with the same persistence, in order to be successful. Whoops.
Evaluating.
John Wooden, you got to care about people, right? Everybody talks about that with kids. The kids know, they smell you. You come in the room, they know who doesn't like them, right? They do. They know who doesn't like them. Teachers are the same. They're just big kids. Every excuse you've ever heard from a teacher is just all the lame stuff kids tell you times 100, right? I mean, really? You know, and so you say, so what do you tell your kids when they pull the same stuff on you? You know, I can't seem to get it in. Come on now. So everybody, you got to know them. You got to be concerned about them. They have to really feel that that's care, that's relationship, in order to be successful with them. And then you need to be disciplined. That goes back to, here's what we're going to do together. I'm going to know as a coach, right? Coach makes you learn those fundamentals, makes you learn how to run those plays, makes you work hard, so that when you hit the game, you do it instinctually. You don't have to think about it. Hard. But it has to be disciplined, because if it's not, it's anarchy, right? You got some teachers that are just not going to do what they need to do. So you have to be willing to be the parent every once in a while. You go shopping with them on Sunday for their computer, if you're Lisa. And then you come in on Monday and say, okay, we went shopping yesterday, now here's what we're going to do today.
And then the other thing that's really important is, as we work with the coaches, we've got to have that same attitude with them. It's not just about, you know, how the coaches do it with the teachers. It's about us caring for our coaches as well, and making sure, and Karen does a really good job, you know, when we've got something going on, you know, and it has nothing necessarily to do with what's going on in the job, but she knows where everybody's at and what's going on, so that if something's going on in that person's performance, she can say, well, you know, but I know Lisa's mom just died, you know, because she knows, and I just don't know how she does it, because I mean, like she said, there's like, you know, 12 of us, well, 11 and a half of us, and she knows what's going on with everybody, because she wants to make sure that as she goes ahead and starts thinking about how this person's performing or how that person's performing, if there's some other kind of lens going on in what's going to filter what they're doing, she knows what that is. And I think that's really important when we talk about evaluating our coaches.
Right? Who said that? Back corner of the room. A leader or a coach is going to take you there. When they're doing after-school trainings, we have something called Tech Tuesdays that we do for like 7 weeks in the fall and 7 weeks in the spring, where we've got 5 or 6 classes offered after school in the business wing of one of our high schools. So everybody kind of comes over there, there's a lot of momentum built for it. And you know what? They're in there, they're teaching, they've been prepping for it. So if somebody has to crawl under the table to get the network jack working right, or something like that, or run down to the office to make the photocopies, or start the class because the teacher's not there yet, or something like that, that's what I'm there for. And if I can't do those same things for them, if I can't serve them, then how can I ask them to serve people? How can I do that if I can't serve them? I think that's hypercritical.
Yeah, it is. So talk about portfolios, evaluations.
We've been doing portfolios since the very first year we were in existence. Matter of fact, in order to get the job 10 years ago, you had to turn a portfolio in. And people were told you could apply for the job, but then here are the things that had to be in your portfolio, and you're not even going to get called for, an interview if your portfolio is weak. And people ask us all the time, how do we get your job, how do we do whatever? These teachers, because they're so excited about technology. And I tell them, you know what, I need to see what you're doing. Don't tell me I can't do this because I don't have a whiteboard. Don't tell me I can't do this because I don't have iPads in my room. The bottom line is you need to be burning it up with whatever you have access to. Then I know you got the chops to do this job. If not, don't even talk to me. Because you don't have the chops to do the job. Because we just talked about all the things you got to be able to do. And if y'all can't use what you got in your room already, forget it. So I think it's really critical that we do portfolios. We've been doing performance assessments since the beginning. And every year it's just morphed itself. And now what we did this year, I think we put the...
It's in that motto, we did our evaluation and for the, because the new standards and all of that. So we had to redo our portfolio guidelines based on those standards. So you guys have got a copy in the Edmodo group of what it is we've got going on. It's still draft, but at least you guys have an idea of where we're going with it.
What we felt each of those 7 standards meant to this role, so that they could be evaluated based on what they were being asked to do, not crammed into the same, little box, the teacher box, because you do so many different things. Okay? Modeling activities, portfolios, observations. When I do observations, I want to see you working one-on-one with somebody, because I want to see what your relationship is. And it may just be that you're doing something with them where you're having a consultative conversation in the cafeteria or whatever. Everybody knows that I just follow people around.
Yeah, it just shows up. Just shows up. So you're like, no matter what it is you have on your schedule, so you're just going to have to do what it is you were planning to do. Because, you got teachers, you got appointments, and she just follows you.
Matter of fact, I did an evaluation yesterday morning on one of the people that's here doing a presentation. Because I just paid for her to bring herself up here. So, what a better way to know what your organizational skills are, what your depth of knowledge is, all those great things, if you're giving a presentation. So she didn't know that when I was in there, she probably would have croaked. But what I want to see is I want to see them functioning in those different types of roles that they have to be in. And I want to see you modeling in the classroom. So those are the things I look at, like one-to-one coaching, consultative things, modeling or co-teaching in the classroom, and then presenting. So those Tech Tuesdays we do and that kind of stuff, I'll just show up there for a while.
Yeah, she just shows up. It's really quite interesting, So then you got the teacher who asks you to do something because they see her and they know that normally you'd be like, no, go do it yourself, right? And then they think that, because then she's like, yeah, so why don't you? And then she invites them to continue to harass you with whatever it is you were refusing to do. It's just an interesting thing.
Then what do you do with the lowest hanging fruit? That's what we were talking about in terms of the refiner's fire. What are you willing to do for the good of the team? We had someone on our team who really was not good for the morale of our team. Broke my heart.
Yes.
Loved the guy to death.
Yes.
Known him for years. And this role just wasn't for him. Right? It's just not for everybody. And so ordinarily you just would get put back in the classroom, because who am I to say you can't be a good teacher, right? I just don't want you messing up my team. But part of it was, we knew that if we put that person back in the classroom, we weren't going to be able to fill that spot. So what was for the good of the team? People having to stretch the scope of what they did, or having somebody on the team that wasn't in the boat rowing the way they needed to row. He is back in the classroom. Because, in a matter of fact, I have a small group, a leadership team within my group, and we talked about it. It wasn't going to be just my decision. I knew what I wanted to do, but I think everybody needed to be a part of that because everybody was affected by that. So we talked about it and decided that they were willing to take on the additional responsibility to not have to have what that was doing to the group. Willing to go, okay? We realign our teams on a regular basis. Look at who the new administrators are coming into certain buildings, whether we've got increased student enrollment somewhere, whether we got a brand new building opening maybe and they've put more technology in there than what the old one was. So we shift around based on the strengths of our individuals. Do that every year.
How do you build relationships if you're constantly changing every year?
Most of them have been around because we do a lot of division-wide initiatives and all of our building principals know all of our people.
Well, I meant with your classroom teachers. If you got a school of 100 teachers, I mean, I'm just saying a high school.
Most of them, when I say we realign every year, I'm talking about strategic. It may just be a person that serves 2 buildings, they serve this one the same
Okay.
and this one different.
Not everybody like being this.
No, because I think that's nuts.
Yeah.
So actually, that's probably what he was thinking. I am a little off balance, but not that bad.
Because I'm thinking in a school, like I have one school has 100 faculty members. If, I've been working with this one school for almost 5 years now. I'm just now to the point that I have those relationships in place, except for my new people that you're constantly building with, because you have that turnover. So if you jumbled me around every 2 or 3 years, you would kill the relationship.
We don't fix it if it ain't broke.
Okay.
Absolutely not. No. A lot of times we do some realignment too if we have to bring somebody new in. We have a mentoring program on our team. Ruth does a lot of the mentoring because most of them are children that she's birthed. We talked about that in the beginning. We do a lot of staff development. We put some examples in Edmodo for you. We do virtual professional development every month. It's the first Friday of every month. And they're going to read articles and talk about maybe a model of technology integration, or maybe we're looking at a new article or whatever. So we put 3 or 4.
Yeah, we put about 4 or 5 of them in there for you. I think that this is really important though, because one of the things that, when we hear that Karen's got some new idea about what it is we gotta learn, some of us really have issues with that. We've grown. We just went through some Promethean master educator thing. This took us out of the classroom for a couple days. Like, I got buildings to deal with. And she wants me to learn this Promethean stuff, But the bottom line is, she makes it what we need so that we can serve multiple teachers. Just because my teachers aren't into that whole thing doesn't mean that I don't need that in my toolbox, And she does. She makes it very, very rigorous. As a matter of fact, we have a running joke about recertification. Because when our people on our team need to recertify, we just have to go back and look at what we did last 6 months. Because last 6 months will cover it. Whatever it is, we got it done. Because she pushes us so hard and makes us do so much. But I think part of that is so that she knows where she's going to have to put extra help when we have something rolling out. For example, we had this new thing called Education City. All the teachers got Education City now, and so they all need to know how to use it. But because she knows what certain people do and what their strengths are and what their strengths aren't, she knew that which schools were going to have an extra trainer to go to that building to get that done. So it's really important that as we talk about doing that, and she does a lot with professional development for our team. And the other thing that's really important is the whole definition of what's fair. Because certain people get certain things and certain people don't. And the bottom line is, if you need it, come to her and make your case. Because then if you make your case, she'll give it to you. But you got to make your case. Because, that's what's fair is not, we don't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of anything. But what we do have is the ability to give people what they need. Everyone doesn't need the same thing. And so that's something that she does when she does looking at our professional development.
And everybody knows if they've been asked to do something by their building administrator that they need assistance for, all they have to do is send out the email to folks, and then they know that they are empowered to make the adjustments in their schedule to help the people that they need to help on their team. Yes?
Okay, I love your idea of building the skills. We all need that, of course, but how do you schedule that professional development for your coaches?
A lot of times what we do is school will start, and we've got to get school open, right? Everything's broken, people need help, they need gradebook training, who knows what. And then what happens is once they're up and running, we'll come out for 3 days. Because a lot of times, like if we have a division-wide staff development day, for example, most of the time our folks are being asked to be a part of that. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll wait till it's benchmark testing, and then we'll pull out on for 2 days during benchmark testing. Because, right, I'm not going to have you sitting on a chair in a hallway monitoring a bathroom if I can have you in making you a better person at what you're supposed to do, right?
Torturing us.
So torturing them, yeah.
Any sacred, like routine, weekly, bi-weekly time that you?
We meet once a month on Friday afternoons, which everybody loves, but it's the only time I could get a conference room, right? So we meet once a month on Friday afternoons. We always have some kind of staff development in there. Virtual professional development is the first Friday of every month. They know that they can take an hour out of their schedule that Friday afternoon and do that, but you've got a week and a half to get it in. So, you play that. And then one of the other things we use to build team and to staff develop is to come to places like this. But if you're coming with me, you're going to be standing up in front of a room or you don't get to come. Because I gotta pay for you just to come and walk around and go, oh, she was really good. You know what? You need to man up and do it yourself. Because we've invested in you, and you are good enough to do that. And I believe that every one of them is. So, does that answer your question? We do the meetings, where we do staff development, and we do virtual professional development. And then, because see, our folks, with the exception of 3 people, they're all 10 months. So we've got to get everything ready for them when they come back, but they come back when the teachers come back. So that's kind of tough. But we do. We will always pull ourselves out for 3 days after school has gotten up and running. And then we'll do probably 1 day during each of the benchmark times. The other thing that we do sometimes during testing is we will sequester ourselves with people from the other content areas and develop resources for them. Because, I don't know about you, but some of our people are like, I have to do what? Advanced science? No, I don't know that. So we sit with them and help develop flip charts or other kinds of things for them. So that resource development is also done during those times when you really can't be in the classroom with the teachers. So I need you to be, it's like billable hours in a law firm, right? You need to be billable all the time. I'm not going to have you sitting in a hallway monitoring the bathroom. That's crazy. That's return on investment. And that's the conversation I had with the superintendent. Because that is wasting taxpayer money. I don't care what anybody says. And since I'm a taxpayer in the city I work in, I get cranky. I do get cranky.
So, one of the things that I wanted to just, as we close out, talk about is that, every one of our coaches knows that Karen thinks that they're good at what they do. No matter if they're having issues or difficulty in their building, or if there's some skill set that they just don't seem to be able to manage to get, she thinks that they're great at what they do.
People skills.
So we want to make sure that you understand that as you're building a team, even if they've got shortcomings, even if they've got rough edges, the bottom line is they've got to know that you believe in them. And I can really honestly say that we all know Karen believes in us. She's very honest about what our shortcomings are, but she really truly does believe that we're all good. And then sometimes we need extra things to make us better. So, bottom line is,
the big mamma jamma, the one that everybody knows, right? They can only win one game every now and then. But if your team is playing together, you can win 20 games in a row, just like the Oakland Athletics. And we tried to put some of our tools out there for you in the Edmodo group. If ever you have a question, email us, you know. We're happy to chat or to do what we can, but I really believe that that what you do is incredible stuff.